Welcome, everyone, to Tech Allies, the conversation, a podcast where we sit down with today's technology leaders for real discussions about the people behind the roles, the work that matters to them, and the impact they're trying to make today. I'm your host, Billy Mitchell, and on today's episode, we go beyond the title of Kent Taggart, CEO and co-founder at Withmender, and the chairman of the board for the Tackle Tomorrow Foundation. At Tech Allies, we believe in authentic connection, collaboration, and giving back. And today's guest embodies all of that. Kent, welcome. How are you today?
Hey, Billy, I'm doing great. I'm excited about our conversation.
I am too. I personally have been a part of one of the Tackle Tomorrow events and had a great time. So I'm looking forward to diving in on that. As a reminder to you, as well as our guests, we break this podcast up into three separate sections. Number one, we want to talk about your personal journey, kind of get to know you, how you got to where you're at now. Number two, we want to talk about where you're spending most of your time today. What are some of those things that are going on that you're working towards, some of the challenges you might be facing and how you're making your way through them. And then finally, we want to talk about the impact and the future of the tech industry or just the work that you're doing within Tech Allies and correlated with the organization as well. So with that, we'd love to get to know you. If you don't mind, maybe just spend a couple minutes talking about you and who you are and how you got to where you're at.
Sure. So I hate to say it, but I'm a Bay Area, California native, and spent the first 16 years of my life there. As I became a teenager and started to develop some autonomy, I was a bit of a rebel. And my parents, in an act of both love and desperation, actually sent me to a wilderness program in Utah. And so that was a January through March type situation, usually a 6 to 8 week program, and I took 12. And we're out in the wilderness, backpacking every day, cooking your own food, learning how to make fire with a bow drill, and sort of just taking everything back to basics: survival, getting along with a peer group, working together, collaborating, and all of that. And that was and that led to me going to boarding school in Western Montana as well. So these two sort of non-traditional experiences pretty early on in life that really connected me to the outdoors. And that's been something that's carried through, my personal life and now my career as well. And we'll get into that a bit. The other thing that happened during both of those was I did a ton of reading. Between the 24 months or so that I was gone, I read something like 160 books. And that's something that has also continued with me and is very much related to the work that I do with Tackle Tomorrow Foundation. I've always been searching and trying to improve and grow and become a better version of myself. And that's also how I try to lead the organization. A lot of self-reflection, carrying a lot of responsibility for all of the people whose lives depend on this company being a going concern, and my ability to effectively lead that company and ensure its success. And so really invest a lot of my time and energy in sharing many of those things that I've learned with other people that I interact with, and supporting everyone around me as best I can.
That's awesome. One of the things that I like about doing this podcast is I personally don't do much research on our guests before because I want to hear it for the first time with our listeners. So one of the follow-up questions I have for you, first of all, 160 books is quite a bit of books, quite a bit of reading. What is one of the books that stood out to you the most that you remember?
Yeah, there's a ton, and I did the whole gamut, a lot of classics and a lot of philosophy and really was into psychology and stuff. I think, the one that I probably keep on coming back to the most is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And the premise of that book is really that in between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space lies our growth and our freedom. And I think it's an incredibly profound message of hope, that we all are dealt cards that we cannot control, but we can control how we react to the things that happen to us. And we have the opportunity to take that space and recognize it and make decisions and react intentionally so that we can move towards the desired outcome that we want. And I've found that the more I practice that, the easier it gets. And it doesn't just have a positive impact for me and allow me to, you know, move towards the desired result, but it also has a positive impact on everybody else around me as well. So that one's definitely stuck with me.
That's neat. It sounds like you're heading into more of a stoic mindset and philosophy, and how we can control ourselves and our reactions rather than the outward world that's around us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much truth to that, and so many of us don't grasp that.
Yeah,
And I wish I had earlier on in life, frankly.
for sure. That's good. So obviously, with that as your background, that experience as your background, probably a lot of lessons that you've learned in how it shapes you in how you lead today. So if you could just from a reflective nature, what is one of the things that stood out the most? Maybe an event that happened or a scenario that played out during that time that you really believe specifically shaped one of the ways that you lead today?
Yeah, great question. So when I was in college in Los Angeles, I started a business that collected electronic waste, and which is very much related to what I do today. And I was driving a box truck and going out and collecting all this electronic waste and bringing it back to a 5,000 square foot warehouse in Compton. And then I dig through it and carve out resale product that I could like make real money on versus product that was just going to get recycled. And all of that recyclable product I'd send up to Northern California, where I'm from, to my dad's business, where he was shredding all of that stuff up and running separations and pulling out the precious metals and stuff. As I graduated from college, I sold my business to my dad's company. And this is not a big number. This is like me getting a real job mostly and like, a little bit of money. And my wife at the time and I, still my wife, but we moved to Bentonville, Arkansas. My dad's company had just signed a contract with Walmart, and I got to build Walmart's program, taking all of their old IT equipment and finding new life for it as opposed to recycling it, which was an incredible opportunity. And I learned a ton, and I did it working with what might be the hardest customer, in the world to support. I then moved back to California and ran a division in my dad's company that really does what I do today, which is IP asset disposition, services and remarketing associated with end of life electronics. Grew that, but unfortunately, his company had taken on private equity investment back in 2012. So this is now 2018. They busted some covenants. The debt got sold to another private equity fund. That private equity fund came in and said, "Hey, we need you to sign the business over to us." And we got counsel, found some lawyers that said, "Hey, the way out of this, you can do that, and that'll be pain free, except that you're losing all of your equity and future upside. Or we can throw this into Chapter 11. You guys can try to become the debtors in possession and sort of navigate the bankruptcy and take this out the other side." And so the executive team that I was a part of at that point made that call, and we did that. And unfortunately, immediately in the first hearing, the judge appointed a trustee, which means we lost all control. And that trustee sold that business off for parts. And this is a business that, my dad had run since 1980, which was 6 years before I was born. And so some of my earliest memories are of going into the office and walking through his yard where they're processing all of this equipment, and I'm taking apart old hard 250 meg hard drives with a screwdriver and stuff. And that was my childhood, and like all of a sudden all of that was gone. And I was in this position there where I was growing this division and like seeing a ton of success, and it felt like there was like this obvious trajectory, and like gone overnight, or very quickly. And so I went and I sort of packaged up our best employees and went and sold us as a package to a competitor, and they moved me out here to Texas to open up an operation and lead a small sales force. And I was there for a year, and the culture was horrendous, just terrible, and the contract that I had negotiated with all sorts of upside opportunity wasn't getting honored, and I saw that, it wasn't going to go anywhere. And so that was the point at which I teamed up with my now partner, Robert Irwin, and we broke off and we started our own business. And that experience of losing all of that and then going into an environment that just had a terrible culture really made an impact on me. And so as we started Mender, we said, hey, we've got this opportunity to take this little corner of the earth that we're going to create, and we can do it in a way that we're proud of and where we're excited to come to work every day, and that hopefully the people that are coming to work with us aren't going home and complaining about the work or the boss or whatever, and instead they're talking about the exciting stuff they're doing and what a great place it is to be. And we realized, even as we started the business, that we had the opportunity to do that. And so that's been something that we've been very, very intentional about since the beginning. Core values, creating a mission for the organization. And this isn't like a goal of selling the business for $100 million or something. It's, hey, we want to mend the relationship between corporations and our natural world. And we're going to take 5% of our profit and we're going to put it back towards land and wildlife conservation. And not only that, but we're running a business that reduces the need for net new resources that have to come out of the earth at great cost to the earth every time we open up a new mine, And so it was a way to thread together all of these things that were important to me as a human being, and based on my history and my passions, and same for my partner, but also to create momentum within the organization and cohesiveness within the organization. And so, I think that in general, people are looking for purpose, and many of us have a hard time finding it. And so, one of the things that I see as my responsibility for the organization is to create a sense of cohesiveness and purpose for the organization so that people know why they're showing up to work, and it's not just to make money. And I can tell you the momentum that's created both in our relationships with customers, in our relationships with our employees, and by connecting our employees to the natural world and our customers, frankly, who come along on these events and stuff with us, it's the most amazing, fulfilling feeling. Our retention is incredible. People generally don't leave our business unless we ask them to. And our customers like working with us because they see that there's something different and that they see that there's an impact of working with us, not just for them, and their metrics and SLAs and such, but also that there's something bigger that's going on here. So did I do a good job of describing all of that?
Absolutely.
Anything missing? Okay.
No, it's perfect. And what's funny is you naturally led into the next section and set of questions that I want to dive into.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our conversation today. We want to take a moment to recognize one of our partners that has made this possible. At TechAllies, everything we do is centered around relationships, connecting the right people, fostering meaningful conversations, and creating opportunities for collaboration and growth. Whether it's helping companies find talent, supporting new initiatives, or building strategic partnerships, strong communication is always at the core. That's why we're excited to partner with Zoom. Zoom is an all-in-one AI-first communications and collaboration platform that empowers people to connect and get work done from anywhere. With reliable video meetings, chat, phone, and contact center capabilities, all integrated into a unified workplace platform, Zoom makes it easy for organizations to streamline communication and enhance productivity. We're grateful for Zoom's partnership with TechAllies and their support of this podcast. Now let's get back to Billy and our incredible guest as they continue their conversation.
Because I can now understand more from your experience and your personality, what's led you to where you're at, which then also makes sense as to how Tackle Tomorrow comes into play. So I'd love for you to take some time and afterwards I'll share my own personal story with Tackle Tomorrow. But How'd you get involved with Tackle Tomorrow? I guess what is it, right? Because probably a lot of people listening aren't going to know exactly what it is. Who's Charles
Yeah,
Haley? Why should we know him? And what's going on
yeah.
there?
Yeah, so Charles Haley is a friend of mine now, and has been for a couple of years. Five-time Super Bowl winner, two of those with my 49ers. Obviously that's where I grew up, and I've got a connection there. And I remember sitting on my dad's lap, watching the 49ers play and seeing Charles Haley just tear into the quarterback on the other side. And so through sort of a weird set of circumstances, somehow Charles Haley and one of his board members showed up at Mender one day, and we toured him through the operation, and we talked about how, hey, there's this opportunity for us to take some of the computers that come through our operation, and maybe we can donate those to your labs to support the reading efforts and STEM efforts and all of that. And he called me up a week or so later and said, hey, do you want to join my board? And so that happened, and it's been an incredible experience. Charles is very charismatic guy. He's incredibly passionate, and it just oozes out of him. And he'll get up and speak, and most of our listeners have probably experienced this at this point, and you become emotional as well because of how effectively he communicates, and he just draws you right in. And this is a guy that has accomplished so much. 5 Super Bowl rings is incredible, and obviously the path to get there is incredibly difficult. And he'll tell you that the hardest part of his path was graduating from college, because he came into college reading multiple grade levels behind, and nobody could do the work for him. He had to do the work in order to graduate, and his teachers didn't take it easy on him. And so he, as a result of that, has seen the impact and the doors that graduating from college and having a good education has opened for him. And he believes that literacy, and I agree with this, literacy is the gateway, it's the foundation. Without that, there are so many doors that are closed to you. And what we find as we dig into the research is that early childhood is really what makes or breaks it. So it's those critical years between kindergarten and third grade. And if you're not reading well by the end of third grade, the future doesn't look nearly as bright. And another thing that's really interesting is that when they build prisons, they look at the area that will feed that prison, and they look at third grade reading statistics in order to determine how many cells they should put in that prison.
Wow. Wow.
So that gives you an idea of what an impact literacy can have. And we're in 10 different schools today. They're all in Dallas ISD. We have impacted thousands of students, and we've actually seen the overall grades of the ratings of those schools improve as a result of the work that we're doing inside of the schools. And sort of taking that back to my story and what I shared with you earlier, reading was what opened doors for me as well. Like I was going down all the wrong paths, and me sitting down and reading those books and looking for something greater than what I had experienced so far, and looking for truths that I knew existed but hadn't found yet. Like that has changed my trajectory. And so I'm just so excited to be involved in an organization that is serving others and opening up doors for these students that might not otherwise have them open to them.
That's incredible. Honestly, that stat blew my mind. I'm left speechless thinking about that. And yet, anecdotally, it makes sense because I know a doctorate student, or whatever you might say, a doctorate student at UT, and I've known him for quite a while. And a long time ago, I asked him what has led to his relative success to where he's at, and the number one thing he said is, "My mom made me read." I became in love with reading, and I took that really to heart, and I've encouraged my two boys to be reading often. And it's crazy because my youngest is in second grade, my oldest is in fourth, and they both
Yeah.
love reading. So it makes me feel better, but it also is humbling and makes me fall in love more with Tackle Tomorrow because, as I mentioned before, we actually joined you guys for the December event.
Yeah.
We live in Austin. We drove up to Dallas, spent a couple
Wow.
nights up there, which was really neat. And yeah, what was amazing, first of all, speaking to Charles Haley, he is an amazing guy, a genuinely amazing guy. There's very few people who are as incredible as he is in a genuine nature
Yeah.
with no outcome desired for his personal gain, all for the people around him. And kind of a funny story, you know this obviously from being part of those events. He does his raffle, right? And
Yeah.
he's giving out just all this amazing stuff to kids, signed jerseys, helmets, whatever that might be. And my oldest son, he got his number picked, and it was a Dak Prescott signed jersey. So he was like absolutely in love. And then
Well.
my youngest son, he's sitting there kind of like waiting, right? And the very last number that Charles pulled out was my youngest son's, and he
Oh
went up
yeah.
there and got a signed helmet. So there's all displayed right now. They absolutely love it. So on top of just making an impact on my kids, the event as well was
Yeah.
incredible by delivering the turkeys to the schools for the families to come and pick up. So all that to say, I absolutely love what you guys are doing there. I encourage anybody and everybody to get involved, to donate, to support, whatever the case might be, because what you guys are doing is absolutely incredible. So good on you guys for
That
doing that.
what you said about your friend's mother driving him to read or forcing him to read at a
Yeah,
young age. I think that's a really critical component of this, and that is why we do so much work with the communities as well, and not just the students. Is that we want to let the communities know we're there, and that we're there to help them in general, not just with their children's reading, and so that they have visibility into the program and what it is, and hopefully that translates into them supporting their kids to show up to school and stay after at the program so that they can do the additional reading, and that that leads to a culture of supporting literacy.
yeah, absolutely. It's incredible. It's very important. And as a good tie into our next section, the reason
Sure.
I was up there is my involvement with Tech Allies, and
Yeah.
Trish and her family invited me. And I can now also connect all these dots, right? Tech Allies is really built around the idea of opening doors
Yeah.
for people, or opening doors for just connection, development. Obviously, they have a component that focuses on the younger generation and the up and coming leaders that are going to be replacing you and I here in the next little bit.
Yeah.
And a partnership with Tackle Tomorrow makes a lot of sense, right? Because that's directly feeding into that. So for you personally, earlier in your career, who opened some doors for you, and how has that shaped? I guess it's going to be easy to see just in the stories you've told, but how has that connected the dots to where you're at today?
Oh man, there's a lot of those people. Um, I'm tearing up a little bit because one of them has passed away. Um, the gentleman named C.J. Charlton, and he was in Bentonville, Arkansas when I moved out there, and he he ran a logistics company that we had sort of partnered up with, to support Walmart, and he was the first corporate traffic control manager for Walmart. Which, if you think about the nature of Walmart and how big their fleet is, how many trucks are out there on the road and stuff, like it was
That's a
this guy's
job.
job to build the process for how to manage that. Nobody had done it there before. And he knew all of the CEOs throughout the years, and they'd come in for interviews and they'd stay at his house, and just flew on Sam Walton's private plane and had incredible stories about what all of that was like. And here I am, and I'm a 23-year-old punk kid, and he just took me under his wing and you know opened doors for me with Comcast and deeper and wider within Walmart, and gave me advice after every meeting. And this is a guy who grew up in Arkansas and lived life a little bit different, a little bit slower than I had coming from the Bay Area in California, but just had incredible wisdom and gravitas and humility, in spite of all of the successes that he had had. And that was service. Like, he didn't have to do any of that. I probably didn't deserve it. And so I would say that, like, that mindset, maybe didn't realize it at that point, but like that mindset of service and helping others before you ask them for anything, is something that ultimately I've learned and adopted. And if I were to speak to aspiring leaders or people that are early on in their career, I would say that's it. Like, there's a great book called The Go-Giver that illustrates that same concept as well. And it's like, approach every situation not thinking, what can I get out of this, but instead saying, how can I be of service? How can I support the person that I'm having a conversation with, or that's across the table from me? And I've just found that as I've entered my 30s and got out of the sort of warrior stage of my career, and I've adopted that mentality, it's incredible what has happened. The relationships I've built, the opportunities that have arisen, the just crazy circumstances that have happened. And
I think
none of that is TechAllies related, with the exception of like that principle and me engaging with that principle as I have stepped into the TechAllies community and interacted with everybody there.
yeah, that honestly, I we could almost just end the podcast right here. That was an incredible landing, and an amazing story. I appreciate you sharing that. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of where I want to go from here, just because I think that was incredible. Just the whole concept of um, giving without expectation, how much you actually receive.
Yeah.
And when you have a heart to serve others, uh, I think everybody ends up realizing that somehow they're getting served themselves. I've got a
Yep.
couple guys that I meet with on a regular basis, and we have incredible conversations about life, work, all those things. And even though there's a bit of me mentoring them, they're serving me in so much
Yeah.
greater and deeper ways. And I can see that's evident with you. And it does actually bring us into a really good topic. So let's dive into Tech Allies.
Sure.
How did you get involved with Tech Allies? What does Tech Allies mean to you? And what are some of the things that stick out? Maybe another way to think about this is, as we unpack this journey, is what are some of those wins personally or for your company, or with Tackle Tomorrow?
Yeah, look, I mean, first and foremost, Tech Allies is a community made up of great people. I really have been impressed with the care with which people are selected to join the community, and to some extent, I think it also begins to self-select, and some of the types of individuals that I might run into in other circumstances don't tend to be attracted to this type of environment. Because I think it is very much built around a purpose and built around close human connections, and not just, hey, I'm grandstanding and look at me and look at my title and that sort of thing. So I joined Tech Allies a few years ago. Maybe I think this is our third or fourth year, because I had been running the business. We're only 6 or so years into running the business, and so for the first 3 or 4 years, I was really head down in it. Managing customer relationships, building processes, hiring people, being in a lot of the processes, and I sort of reached this point where I said, all right, I need to start looking up and out. We've got to scale the organization. I need to be building a network. I wasn't, from the DFW area, and somehow I had run across Oh, actually, this time around, Trisha reached out to me because she was looking for an ITAD specific partner to join the organization. She had actually had a little bit of experience working in sort of an adjacent industry, and one of the gentlemen that she had worked with there was a friend of mine. And so she had been talking to him and asking, "Hey, who's an ITAD partner that we can bring into the community?" And he had recommended me and Mender. And so that's actually how it came around this time. I had tried to join Technology Ball, before it was
Yep.
Tech Allies, when I was working at that company in that interim year, as a way to develop a network and generate leads and stuff. But I went to a couple of them, and I think the company I was working for didn't want to sign a check or something. But so it's worked out much better this time around
Yeah.
when I've had the
Yep.
autonomy to engage with it and sort of be the representative there.
That's good.
You want to guide me back to questions there? I feel
Yeah,
like I
no,
lost track a little bit.
absolutely. That's my job to keep us on track. So, what are some of those wins? Like, what are
Yeah,
some of the success stories, things that stick out to you as you've spent time with the whole crew? And just to share a quick story as well. And I'll probably share this story a bunch of times, but my first experience with Tech Allies was at one of the executives' home for small networking party, and
yeah,
candidly, I was nervous going there, right? Because I'm going to be
sure,
in this room with a bunch of executives who work at incredible places, and here I am, lowly Billy, just going to walk in and start talking to
yeah,
people. And the very first person I met shook my hand and asked a bunch about me and just said, "Hey, let me show you around. Here's some food. Here's some drinks. Why don't you meet this person?" And every
yeah,
single person I interacted with in a really unique way was extremely inviting,
yeah,
caring, kind, wanted to know about me,
yeah,
and engaged in conversation. And that moment, I realized there's something different with the Tech Allies community. There's
yeah,
something that they bring together, which might be part of that selective process, that each of the individuals that are part of it, and I can see this with you as well, deeply care about the people around them. I think there's a common recognition that they are where they're at because of people who supported them. So they
exactly.
want to give that in return. So
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about your experience, some of those wins with Tech Allies.
yeah. It's it's been awesome. The engagement there with multiple different now customers has been excellent. It's been really good for our business. There's four that come to mind immediately. I think HKS Architects was the first one
Yep.
that we actually signed a contract with Nicole there and started doing work for. And we actually were able to recover money from the jobs that we were doing for them, and were able to write them a check for their old
Wow.
hardware, and still be performing services for them, going on site and picking up all this old hardware and packaging it and pulling it back to our facility and wiping hard drives and auditing it and letting them know what they sent us, which is hard for companies to track sometimes. And so we were adding value, in terms of our service offering, and because the product that they were sending us had good value, they actually offset the cost of all of those services and ended up with a check
That's cool.
back. So, yeah, that was sort of win number one, I would say, and that happened in that first season where we were engaged, and Nicole has been awesome. And then we've been doing work with Cantex and Tony Wilkins. It's been a great relationship. Hopefully, it's solved some problems for them. It's been really fun to see that relationship grow. Doing work with Mike Sanama at TD Industries. Also had a pretty substantial win for excuse me, Tony Caesar at Ericsson, related to laptops that they had at employee homes all over the
Oh,
world in 17 different countries. And so we were able to build a program for them to send boxes out to each one of those individuals' homes with return labels in them so that those laptops could get returned to a partner of ours and, geographically all around the world. And we tracked all of that through a portal, and they were looking for a break-even solution. They're just like, hopefully this doesn't cost us anything. And we actually were able to write them a six-figure check at the end of that, and
incredible.
performed all of that service over a 2 or 3 month period. So it was a great win, a lot of fun to put that program together, And Tony's team was amazing, and hopefully they have similarly pleasant thoughts around that whole engagement as well. And we've signed a contract with Heidi and her team and Mike Smith at Trinity Industries. So that's an exciting one that's upcoming. They've got a few projects that we'll be kicking off here shortly.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, Kent, this has been an incredible conversation. I try not to prep our guests, but I want to do what I call a lightning round.
Sure.
This conversation's been great. It's been fun. This kind of brings it down onto a lighter note, get to know you
Yeah.
a little bit
Yeah.
differently, and then we'll land the plane here. So with
Great.
that, I'm going to ask you just a few questions. First thing that comes to your mind. Sound good?
All right.
Love it. All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Yeah, I've had a couple already. A
Three
book,
cups. Yeah.
podcast, a book, podcast, or resource that's influenced your leadership journey the most.
Man, I mean, I'm going to go to books. I would say The Motive by Patrick Lencioni.
I love Lencioni, and I don't know if I've read that, so I'm going to check it out.
That's a good one.
All right, what's a bucket list item you've already checked off?
The day I graduated from high school in Marion, Montana, I went skydiving with both of my parents, my older brother, and my younger sister. And that was great because I'm like, that whole year or year and a half that I was out there on this prairie was like this little ranch in the boarding school I was at, and there was a skydiving place like across the prairie from us. So the whole time I'm in school, there's people falling out of the air
Watching.
and saying like, "I want to do that," you know. So yeah, that one's done.
That's cool. That's a great one. What's one goal you're still chasing today?
I want to buy a mountain ranch and
Ooh.
watch my grandkids run around there and teach them how to ride a horse and take care of the land and commune with it.
And go tell them to dig a hole for no reason. Just dig a
Yeah,
hole.
sure. Or here's how you gut a deer, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. Good. All right. And then final question for you in one sentence, if you don't mind, what does Tech Allies represent to you?
Just say it's an incredible network of caring and engaged human beings.
Yeah, I concur. I would agree with that. Well, Ken, I appreciate you sharing really not just what you do, but really a lot more about who you are. So if our listeners want to connect with you, what's one of the best ways to reach out?
LinkedIn, Kent at Withmender.com. I'd give out my phone number, but who knows where this is going. So you can talk to
I think
Trisha.
that's good. I think that's perfect. Wonderful. Awesome. Well, hey, for everybody else, this has been a conversation with Kent Taggart, a Tech Allies podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to follow along and continue the conversation with the Tech Allies community. I'm Billy Mitchell, and I'll see you next time.